I caught my wife cheating with her boss, and now she's suing me for half of our $350, $0 house and $250, $0 in savings after I discovered she secretly sold our property and transferred $100, $0 to her sister, all while pretending to be pregnant with our second child. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife turned out to be a complete nightmare. The craziest part. It all started with a gut feeling, and then one night I caught her red-handed. You wouldn't believe the level of betrayal I uncovered. She was cheating on me with her boss, Mark. Yeah, Mark. The guy she used to say was just a work friend, but apparently it was more than that. And the worst part, she was pretending to be pregnant with our second kid, all while secretly sneaking around behind my back. We've been married for 5 years. We bought a house together, a nice place worth around $350, $0. I worked my ass off to pay for it and always acted like she was the perfect wife, taking care of the house, pretending to be pregnant and throwing around her future family plans. But I started noticing things, little things at first. She'd be secretive on her phone, hiding her texts. She'd leave the house at odd hours, claiming she was at work or meeting friends. But the real red flag was when I found her phone one day and there were messages from Mark. Flirty, suggestive messages. I didn't want to believe it at first, so I brushed it off as just workplace banter. Then came the bigger signs. She started acting distant, snapping at me over nothing, avoiding intimacy and insisting she was just stressed. She said the pregnancy was making her tired and moody, but I knew better. I saw her sneaking out late at night, and once I followed her and caught her sneaking into Mark's apartment. That's when everything crumbled inside me. I saw them together through the window, her in a tight dress, him with his arm around her, kissing her like they had the world to hide. I was stunned. My mind was racing. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this to me, to us? I didn't say anything right then. I just backed away and went home, trying to process what I'd just seen. But the truth was, I'd known something was wrong for a while. I just didn't want to accept it. Now it was painfully clear. The next day I started digging. I went through her phone again, found even more evidence, texts, photos, plans to meet up after work. She'd been lying to my face for months. The worst part, she kept insisting she was pregnant with our second kid, trying to convince me to stay to be a family, while she was out screwing her boss. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. How could she lie so blatantly? How could she pretend to be the loving wife and mother while secretly planning her affair? I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I decided I couldn't stay silent. I confronted her that night. I laid everything out, showed her the evidence, told her I knew she'd been cheating on me with Mark. Her reaction: she flipped out, called me crazy, said I was stalking her, and that I was overreacting. She said Mark was just a friend, that she was innocent, and I was just paranoid because I was insecure. That was her go to excuse, blame me, say I was jealous or imagining things, but I wasn't stupid. I knew what I'd seen. I knew the truth. Her denial didn't stop the pain from hitting me hard. I felt like my entire world was collapsing. I was angry, yes, but also devastated. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. The woman I married, the woman I wanted to build a family with, had been lying to my face for months. And the fact that she was pretending to be pregnant, faking that second kid, just made everything worse. It was like she was playing with my emotions, my trust, and my life. I sat there, stunned, trying to make sense of it all. Part of me wanted to scream, to shout at her, to demand answers, but I knew that wouldn't change anything. I also knew I couldn't just brush this under the rug. I had to make a decision. Do I forgive, or do I cut her out completely? Do I fight for what's left of our marriage, or do I walk away and rebuild my life from scratch? The betrayal cut so deep I wasn't sure if I'd ever recover from it. But I knew one thing: you don't come back from someone cheating with their boss, especially when they're lying about being pregnant and secretly transferring money to her sister, all while pretending to be the perfect family woman. That's when I realized I was dealing with a level of deception I'd never imagined possible. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't look at the same way. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. selfish, manipulative, and completely untrustworthy. But what hit me hardest was the realization that she'd been planning her escape for a while. The signs had been there, but I'd ignored them, blinded by love or maybe just too comfortable. Now I was forced to face the cold, hard truth. She had been lying to me about everything, especially the pregnancy. The first thing I did was dig into her financials. I needed to see exactly what she'd been up to behind my back. It took some effort. She was smart about hiding things, using her phone, burner accounts, secret emails. But I found enough to confirm my suspicions. She had secretly sold off some of our property, probably to fund her secret life. I found transaction records showing she transferred $100, $0 to her sister Lisa. That was money we'd saved for years, supposed to go toward our kids' college funds and our future. Instead, she'd been funneling it away, hiding it from me. And then there was the house. She'd been secretly talking about refinancing it, trying to get her hands on more cash. I found mortgage documents, signatures that weren't mine, and a sneaky little clause she'd inserted that would give her half of the house, our house, if we divorced. I couldn't believe it. She'd been planning her escape from the start, all while pretending to be pregnant and acting like she cared about our family. That's when I decided I couldn't just sit around and let her take everything. I needed a plan. I started talking to a lawyer, an aggressive one. I knew I had grounds for a divorce and I wanted to fight for my rights. I also wanted to make sure she didn't get away with stealing from us. I was furious, but I had to keep my head. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. While I was doing all this, kept up her act. She pretended to be so stressed about the pregnancy, crying at times, trying to guilt me into staying. She claimed she was confused, that she loved me but was overwhelmed. Yeah, right. The whole time she was planning her next move. I knew she was lying about everything, especially when I caught her talking to her boss again on the sly about a new job, a new life somewhere far away. She was already mentally checked out. The worst part, she was still pretending to be pregnant. She even went as far as to fake ultrasounds, showing me fake images she had printed online. She'd sit there, rubbing her belly, acting like she was about to give birth. I saw through her. I saw the cracks in her story, the inconsistencies. She was a master manipulator, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and deep sadness. My trust had been shattered into pieces. I started to see her for who she really was, a liar and a thief. The woman I loved, or thought I loved, had been using me, taking advantage of my trust and my hard work. I realized I had to get out, not just for my sanity, but to protect what little was left of my dignity. I couldn't let her ruin me or take everything I'd built. Not without a fight. So I made some tough decisions. I filed for divorce, and I made sure the legal process was airtight. I had to fight her on the house, her claim to half of our savings, and her sneaky transfer of money. I also started gathering evidence, screenshots, bank records, her texts with Mark, everything. I knew she'd try to spin it, try to lie her way out of it, but I had enough to prove she'd been cheating, stealing, and lying at every turn. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry beyond words. Part of me wanted to lash out, to scream and curse her to hell, but I knew that wouldn't help. I had to stay calm, focus on my legal rights, and protect myself. Still, every time I saw her fake pregnancy bump or her fake tears, I felt this surge of rage. How could she do this? How could she lie about everything? About the baby, about the house, about her own family. It was like she was a different person entirely. Looking back, I realized how naive I was. I thought I'd be with her forever, that we had a future. Instead, I got a front row seat to her manipulation and betrayal. I don't regret loving her, but I do regret trusting her. Now I'm just trying to pick up the pieces. The house, the savings, the trust, all of it was on the line, and I knew I'd have to fight tooth and nail to get what I deserved. The betrayal was deep, but I was determined not to let her walk away with everything she wanted, especially not while lying and scheming and pretending to be pregnant. That was the moment I realized I'd never let her get away with this without a fight. Once I had the legal groundwork laid out, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had a plan, something to hold onto in the chaos. Dread because I knew wouldn't go down without a fight. She had always been manipulative, and now she was cornered. Her false pregnancy was her biggest lie she'd been faking. Ultrasounds, buying pregnancy tests online, even borrowing a fake bump from a friend just to keep up the act when I was around. Seeing her rub that fake belly, acting like she was about to give birth, made me sick. It was all a lie, a cruel game she was playing with my emotions. The morning after I filed for divorce, she called me crying, saying she was so sorry, that she made a mistake, and that she still loved me. That was her typical tactic: play the victim, make me feel guilty, and hope I'd back down. But this time I wasn't having it. I told her I knew everything. About her affair with Mark, her secret transfers, the fake pregnancy, and her plans to take half the house and savings. I told her she had no idea how much damage she'd done, not just to me but to our entire family. Her reaction: she accused me of trying to ruin her, said I was overreacting, and that I was just jealous because Mark was more successful. She insisted she was innocent, that it was all a misunderstanding, that Mark was just a work friend. She was only pretending to be pregnant because she was overwhelmed with stress. Yeah, I'd heard that one before. I knew she was lying, but hearing her say it still made me furious. She was good at twisting everything, making herself the victim and trying to turn the tables. I started to realize how deeply manipulative she'd become. She was trying to gaslight me, to make me doubt my own sanity. But I had enough with her lies. I had the evidence: screenshots, bank transfers, her own texts. I was ready to expose her for what she truly was. I decided I'd take this to court, fight for my rights, and make sure she couldn't walk away with a dime of what we'd built. I wasn't going to let her steal from me, especially not while pretending to be pregnant and scheming behind my back. The emotional toll was brutal. Every day I felt like I was walking a tightrope. One moment I was furious, ready to tear her apart. The next I was devastated, questioning everything I'd believed in. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see through her lies sooner. It was and I wasn't sure how to get off. But I knew I had to stay strong for myself and for my future. Meanwhile's behavior grew more erratic. She'd burst into tears, then turn cold and dismissive. She accused me of destroying her family, all while secretly planning her next move. I caught her sneaking around, talking to her boss again, trying to set up a new life somewhere far away. She was desperate, and her lies were unraveling faster than she thought. She even started to make threats, saying she'd fight me in court, that she'd expose me if I didn't back off. But I knew better. I had the evidence, and I was prepared to fight. The money was another. I discovered she'd been secretly selling off assets, trying to cash in on our shared property, and funneling money to her sister Lisa. I also found out she transferred $100, $0 from our savings account to Lisa's account, claiming it was a gift. But I knew better. That money was supposed to be for our kids' college fund, for emergencies, for our future. Instead, she was using it to fund her escape plan. That was the last straw. I contacted my lawyer and laid out everything I'd found. We started building a case to freeze her accounts, to prevent her from draining any more money. What kept me going was the thought that I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She thought she could manipulate the system, lie her way out, and take everything I worked for. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I had the truth on my side, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. The house, the savings, the little that was left of our life together. She wasn't going to walk away with it all without a fight. Deep down, I felt betrayed on every level, by her lies, by her betrayal. I loved her once, believed in us, and now I was faced with the reality that she had used me, lied to me, and schemed behind my back. But I also knew I had to move forward. I couldn't stay stuck in the pain and anger forever. I had to be strong for myself, for my kids, for the little bit of dignity I had left. Whatever the outcome, I was determined to get through this mess, no matter how much it hurt. Because at the end of the day, I realized that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. And sometimes the only way to reclaim your life is to fight for it, no matter how ugly and unfair it gets. The legal battle started pretty quickly after I filed for divorce. I wanted everything on record: her affair, the fake pregnancy, the secret sale of our property, the transfer of funds to her sister. My lawyer advised me to be meticulous, to gather every piece of evidence I could find. I had kept all the screenshots of her texts with Mark, the bank statements showing the transfers, the fake ultrasound images, and even recordings of her phone calls where she was trying to cover her tracks. It was a lot to handle, but I knew I had to be thorough if I wanted to win this. Meanwhile, his behavior grew more erratic. She started lashing out, accusing me of trying to ruin her, claiming I was just jealous of Mark's success. She would cry, then turn cold, sometimes even threatening to take me to court for custody. Of the kids, even though she was the one lying and cheating, I could see her slipping further into desperation. She still pretended to be pregnant, rubbing her fake belly, insisting she was doing it for the family, even though I knew the truth. She had no intention of actually having another kid. It was just another lie to keep me under her control. Her financial moves were even more reckless. She tried to hide her assets, but I had already uncovered her secret sale of part of our house. The documents she forged, the signatures she faked, they all came to light during the legal process. I also found out she'd been funneling money into her sister Lisa's account, claiming it was a loan, but it was clear she was just trying to hide cash. I had my lawyer freeze her accounts and start an audit. I wanted to make sure she couldn't drain our savings or run away with the money she'd stolen. The emotional toll was intense. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. One minute I was furious, ready to burn everything to the ground. The next I was devastated, questioning how I could have been so blind. I kept replaying the moments I missed the signs, the times I brushed off her odd behaviors. It was like I was mourning the wife I thought I knew, mourning the future I'd envisioned, now shattered beyond repair. One night I caught her again on her phone, whispering with Mark. She was planning her next move, possibly fleeing, maybe even filing false claims to try and get more money. I snapped a picture of her sneaking her phone into her purse, her eyes darting around like a criminal. That was the final nail. I decided I'd have her monitored. I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her whereabouts and her contacts. I wanted to be one step ahead. I couldn't trust her anymore, not after everything I'd discovered. She kept up her act, though. She'd come home, pretend to be exhausted, and act like she was so stressed about the pregnancy. But I saw through her. Every time she rubbed her fake belly or cried about losing the baby, I felt a surge of anger. It was all a game to her, a way to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty for questioning her. She'd even put on a show in front of the kids, acting like the perfect mother. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind for so long. The court hearings were intense. My lawyer presented all the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, the fake ultrasounds, the forged signatures. Tried to deny everything, but her lies crumbled under the weight of the truth. She claimed I was trying to control her, jealous and overreacting, but the judge wasn't buying it. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge ordered her to stay away from the house, froze her assets, and prohibited her from selling any more of our property. But the most shocking moment came during the deposition. I asked her directly about the affair, about the fake pregnancy and the money transfers. Everything but her shaky voice and evasive answers told a different story. Then I dropped the bomb. I had proof of her talking to Mark about a new life, about leaving town, about cutting me out completely. Her face went pale. She knew she was cornered. In those moments, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. I was finally getting justice, but at what cost? My trust was shattered, my marriage was over, and I was left to pick up the pieces. I realized that no amount of money or legal victory could undo the pain of betrayal, but I also knew I had to protect myself and my kids from further harm. Lies had almost destroyed everything, but I was determined to rebuild, even if it meant starting from scratch. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Moved out taking only a few belongings, still insisting she was innocent, still pretending she was pregnant. I stayed in the house trying to keep things civil for the sake of the kids. I made arrangements for their custody, knowing I'd fight to keep them safe from her manipulation. I also started therapy, something I should have done months ago, to deal with the emotional trauma. It was a long road, and I knew I'd have scars, but I was finally beginning to see a way forward. Looking back, I realized how naive I was to trust her blindly. The biggest lesson I learned is that people can hide their true selves behind a mask for a long time. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you to be stronger, more cautious. I don't regret loving her, but I do regret not seeing the signs sooner. Now I'm focused on healing and making sure my kids never have to go through what I did. And I'm telling anyone reading this, trust your instincts, hold on to your boundaries, and don't let someone manipulate or lie to you just because you want to believe in the best. Because sometimes the truth is uglier than you ever imagined. The months that followed were some of the hardest in my life. After the court's ruling, moved out and I stayed in the house, trying to keep things as normal as possible for the kids. The house felt emptier than ever, even with their laughter and chaos filling the rooms. I spent countless nights lying awake, replaying everything, her lies, her cheating, the fake pregnancy, the money she stole. It was like a bad movie I couldn't turn off. But gradually I started to rebuild my mental strength, piece by piece. One thing I did was focus on the kids. They're young, just 5 and 3, and I knew they needed stability. I made sure they saw their dad was still here, still fighting for them even if their mother was gone. I kept their routines consistent, took them to school, helped with homework, and made sure they knew they were loved. It was my anchor in all the chaos. Still, every time called or sent a message trying to guilt me or manipulate me, I had to stay firm. She kept insisting she was innocent, that she was doing it all for the family, but I knew better. I knew she had been scheming for months, pretending to be pregnant, lying about everything. I also started therapy. It helped more than I expected. Talking to someone who wasn't emotionally involved gave me clarity. I realized how much I'd been manipulated, how I'd let her control my trust for too long. The therapist helped me process my feelings of betrayal, anger, and sadness, and gave me tools to move forward. I learned that I wasn't responsible for her lies or her choices. I only had control over my reactions and my future. Meanwhile, I kept building my case. I worked with my lawyer to gather more evidence, especially about her secret sale of the house and the transfer of funds to her sister. I found out she also been setting up a new bank account under a false name, trying to hide her assets even further. I pushed to have everything legally documented: her attempts to hide money, her lies about the pregnancy, her affair with Mark. I wanted to make sure she couldn't manipulate the system anymore. The court had already ordered her to stay away from the house, but I was worried she'd try to find other ways to sneak around or run. The most shocking moment during this period was when I finally got access to her email account. I had my lawyer help me with a court subpoena. What I found confirmed everything: messages with Mark discussing their plans, her attempts to sell the house behind my back, even her conversations with her sister about how to hide her money. The lies were so blatant, it was like she thought she could outsmart everyone. But I had enough evidence now to really put her in a corner. I also discovered she'd been talking about starting a new life somewhere far away, possibly even moving abroad. She was trying to set up a new identity, a new life, all while pretending to be pregnant and acting like she still wanted to work things out. I knew her well enough now to see through her facade. She was desperate, cornered, and willing to lie even more to get what she wanted. That's when I decided I needed to be more aggressive, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I contacted a private investigator to keep tabs on her whereabouts. I wanted to know exactly where she was, who she was talking to, and what she was planning. Throughout all this, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and anger. Relief that I was finally taking control, finally exposing her lies. Anger that she could do this to me, to our family, and that she'd be so willing to destroy everything for her own benefit. She had lied about the pregnancy, lied about the affair, lied about her intentions. I kept asking myself how I missed so many signs, how I was so blind to her deception. But I also started to realize something important. This wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about me reclaiming my life. I refused to let her walk all over me anymore. I was done being the naive husband, the one who believed in fairy tales. The truth is, I was angry, hurt, and disappointed, but I also felt a strange sense of liberation. I was finally taking back control of my life, my future, and my dignity. The legal process was long, messy, and emotionally draining. But in the end, I knew I had done everything I could to protect myself and my children. I'd fought hard to keep my rights, to ensure she couldn't take what was ours. Now I was just waiting for the final judgment, hoping that justice would be served. I knew she'd try to spin everything to manipulate the situation again, but I was prepared. I had the evidence, the law on my side, and most importantly, the resolve to move forward, no matter how much it hurt. Looking back, this whole experience has changed me forever. I've learned that trust is fragile, that people can hide their true selves behind masks for a long time, and that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back hard. I still love my kids, and I still hope for a better future, but I know now to be more cautious, more aware, because betrayal can come from the people you trust the most, and once it does, you better have the strength to face it and fight for what's right. The final stretch of this nightmare has been a whirlwind. After months of legal battles, evidence gathering, and emotional upheaval, I finally got the court's ruling. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The judge ordered to relinquish her claim to the house and the savings, and it was clear she'd been caught red-handed trying to hide her assets and manipulate the system. She was furious, calling me every name in the book, threatening to sue me for custody, and insisting she was innocent and wronged. But deep down, I knew the truth had won out. Getting the house and the savings was a huge relief, but it also brought a strange emptiness. I realized that all the money and property in the world couldn't undo the betrayal I'd experienced. The trust we once had was shattered beyond repair. I've come to accept that some wounds cut too deep to ever fully heal. Still, I have my kids, my sanity, and a sense of justice, things that matter far more than any material possessions. Reflecting on everything, I see how naive I'd been. I loved her, believed in us, and thought we had a future. But her lies and schemes proved otherwise. I learned that people can hide their true selves for years, and sometimes you only see the real face when it's too late. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild, and sometimes it's impossible to repair. But I also learned that I am stronger than I thought. I fought for my rights, for my dignity, and for my children's stability. That's what kept me going through the darkest days. Now I'm focused on healing. I've started therapy again, not just for myself, but also to help my kids process everything. They're resilient, and I want to give them a sense of security and normalcy. I've also taken steps to rebuild my life, working more, saving diligently, and making sure I'm present for my children's future. It's not easy, and I still have moments of anger and sadness, but I know I will come out of this stronger. Looking back, I realize that betrayal teaches you a lot about trust, about yourself, and about the importance of being cautious. I'd advise anyone going through something similar to trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags, and don't let someone manipulate or lie to you just because you want to believe in the best. Protect yourself, fight for what's right, and remember that your worth isn't defined by someone else's lies. Most importantly, I've learned that even in the darkest times, there's a way forward. It might be slow, painful, and filled with setbacks, but it's there. You just have to be willing to fight for it. Because at the end of the day, no one should ever have to stay in a relationship built on lies and betrayal. Take control, stand your ground, and never let anyone rob you of your peace and dignity. That's the biggest lesson I'll carry with me. Trust is fragile, but strength is within us all, waiting to be found when we need it most.